At 6:40 in the evening on Monday, July the 28th, while the world's attention was entirely fixed on Kumamoto, Japan, while aerial footage of the collapsed Aeon Mall was circulating on social media and rescue teams were still working through the debris, a magnitude 4.3 earthquake struck the hills 26 miles northwest of Santa Rosa in Sonoma County, California. 38 seconds later, a magnitude 2.5 aftershock followed from the same location. 2 days later, on Wednesday morning, a magnitude 3.4 struck near Mammoth Lakes in the eastern Sierra Nevada at a depth of 7 kilometers. Neither of those California events made international news. California has earthquakes constantly, and a 4.3 in Sonoma County on the same evening as a 7.1 in Japan is not going to displace Japan's M7.1 from anyone's attention. But Bloomberg Intelligence published something this week in the context of Japan's earthquake damage assessment that I want to put at the center of this video, because it is the most direct framing I have seen of what the California activity actually means in the context of what happened in Japan. Bloomberg noted that Japan's M7.1 Kumamoto earthquake will likely generate insured losses approaching $1.1 billion. And then it said this: Japan handled this. Its insurance system was built for it. California's was not. That sentence is the "here's what's coming" in this video's title. Not a forecast for a specific California earthquake happening soon. I want to be clear about that from the start. California's seismic activity this week is within its normal background range. The Sonoma M4.3 and the Mammoth Lakes M3.4 are not warning signs of an imminent large event in any specific location. What they are is a reminder that California is as seismically active as it has always been, that the faults in the areas where those earthquakes occurred are not passive features of the landscape, but live, loaded fault systems with their own histories and their own potential, and that the specific system California has built to cope with the consequences of a major earthquake is not built like Japan's. Let me explain both of those things carefully. The M4.3 that struck northwest of Santa Rosa on Monday evening occurred in the vicinity of the Rogers Creek Fault. The Rogers Creek Fault is not a name that most Californians outside of the Bay's area seismology community know, but it is one of the most important faults in Northern California, and it is one that deserves specific attention in the context of this week's events. The Rogers Creek Fault runs through Sonoma County, roughly from Healdsburg in the north to the city of Santa Rosa, and it is the northern extension of the Hayward Fault system. The Hayward Fault begins at the Rogers Creek's southern end and runs southward through the East Bay communities of San Pablo, Richmond, Berkeley, Oakland, San Leandro, and Hayward before ending near Fremont. Together, the Rogers Creek Fault and the Hayward Fault form a paired fault system. They are, in the USGS's structural understanding of the Bay Area, a single seismic entity that the geology happens to express as two named segments with a short stepover between them. The Hayward Fault is the fault that California earthquake scientists lose sleep over, not the San Andreas, which is famous and whose hazard is well publicized. The Hayward. The Hayward Fault last produced a major rupture on October 21st, 1868, a magnitude 6.8 earthquake that killed 30 people in a Bay Area with a fraction of today's population, damaged every brick building in Oakland, and was described by survivors as producing the most violent shaking they had ever experienced. That was 158 years ago. The average recurrence interval for major Hayward Fault ruptures, based on the paleoseismic evidence of prior earthquake horizons preserved in excavated trenches along the fault, is roughly 140 to 160 years. We are at or past the average recurrence interval right now. The USGS characterizes the probability of a magnitude 6.7 or larger Hayward earthquake in the next 30 years at roughly 33%, 1 in 3 within a single generation. The Hayward Fault runs directly under the communities of Oakland, Berkeley, Hayward, and Fremont, under the UC Berkeley Stadium, under the Bay Area rapid transit tunnels that carry hundreds of thousands of commuters daily, under hospitals, schools, and water mains that have not all been upgraded to the post-2001 Nisqually seismic standards I described in the Cascadia script. And when the Hayward Fault ruptures, the death toll projection in the USGS's most detailed planning document, the Hayward scenario, published in 2018, is not primarily about the earthquake itself. It is about what happens in the hours and days after. The Hayward scenario models a hypothetical magnitude 7.05 Hayward Fault earthquake at 4:18 in the morning. The model finds that the earthquake itself, in its first 30 seconds, would cause roughly 800 deaths from collapsed buildings, falling debris, and structural failures. That number is genuinely large, but it is not the most alarming number in the document. The most alarming number is 22,000. That is the projected additional death toll from fires ignited by the earthquake and not controlled over the following days, weeks, and months. The earthquake breaks gas lines. It topples electrical transmission infrastructure. It starts fires simultaneously in hundreds of locations across the Bay Area, 400 simultaneous ignitions in some models, simultaneously, at 4:18 in the morning. In communities where every fire station is simultaneously coping with its own station damage, communications disruptions, and downed road access. Where mutual aid from outside the affected region cannot arrive quickly because the bridges and freeway interchanges that allow rapid response across the Bay Area are themselves damaged. The Hayward scenario envisions 400 ignitions becoming dozens of major fires that merge into conflagrations across East Bay neighborhoods over a period of days because there is simply not enough water, not enough equipment, and not enough personnel to fight them all simultaneously. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake is the template for this scenario. The 1906 earthquake, estimated at magnitude 7.9, killed roughly 3,000 people. The great majority of those deaths were not from the earthquake. They were from the fires that burned for 3 days afterward when water mains fractured and the city's firefighting capacity was overwhelmed. The earthquake happened in the morning. The fires burned until it rained. That dynamic, earthquake as ignition source, urban fire as mass casualty event, is the specific scenario that the Hayward document is projecting for a Hayward fault rupture, based on the fault's proximity to the urban East Bay, the density of natural gas infrastructure in the affected area, and the current fragility of the water distribution system that would need to fight those fires. The Rogers Creek Fault, where Monday's M4.3 struck in Sonoma County, is the northern segment of this system. A magnitude 4.3 on the Rogers Creek Fault is not the Hayward scenario. It is background seismicity. But it is a reminder that this system is active, that it is storing energy at approximately 4 centimeters per year of accumulated plate motion, and that the fault network through which the Bay Area's most dangerous seismic threat runs passes through the exact counties where Monday evening's shaking was felt. Now, let me turn to Mammoth Lakes and the M3.4 that struck near there on Wednesday morning, because it points at a completely different kind of California hazard that almost never appears in earthquake coverage, but deserves to be understood specifically. Mammoth Lakes is a small ski resort community in the eastern Sierra Nevada at an elevation of about 7,900 feet. It sits on the boundary of the Long Valley Caldera, a volcanic caldera roughly 20 miles long and 11 miles wide that was formed about 760,000 years ago in one of the largest volcanic eruptions in the history of North America. Long Valley's eruption produced the Bishop Tuff, a sheet of volcanic rock that covers enormous areas of the eastern Sierra and Great Basin, and excavated a depression in the landscape large enough to be visible from satellite imagery as a distinctive oval-shaped lowland. Long Valley is not dormant. It is active. The caldera floor has been deforming upward, inflating, as magma and hydrothermal fluids move within the volcanic system. The center of the caldera has risen more than 80 centimeters since 1979. Steam fumaroles, geothermal areas, and CO2 emissions from the magmatic system are present throughout the caldera and on the flanks of Mammoth Mountain, which is itself a volcanic dome complex on the caldera's western rim. On Mammoth Mountain, CO2 emitted from the magmatic system killed more than 100 acres of trees. The Mammoth Mountain fumarole area, where dead standing trees mark the zone where soil CO2 concentrations reach lethal levels and kill vegetation above them. Long Valley's most significant seismic event in the modern record was in May 1980, when 4 magnitude 6 earthquakes struck within 2 days, followed by hundreds of smaller events. The sequence was so alarming, and the USGS scientists studying it were concerned enough about potential volcanic unrest, that the Forest Service issued an advisory recommending that people avoid the Mammoth Lakes area until the situation became clearer. The 1980 sequence ultimately did not escalate to an eruption, but it established Long Valley as a volcanic system requiring continuous monitoring. The M3.4 near Mammoth Lakes on Wednesday is background seismicity for the Long Valley system. It is not a signal of imminent volcanic activity. The USGS Volcano Hazards Program monitors Long Valley continuously and would flag any escalation in deformation, seismicity, or gas emissions that suggested escalating volcanic unrest. But it is a reminder that the Eastern Sierra Corridor, which most California earthquake coverage treats as outside the Bay Area and Southern California fault systems that receive the most attention, has its own active volcanic and seismic system that merits ongoing awareness. Now, let me come back to the Bloomberg intelligence framing, because this is the what's coming at the center of this video's question. Japan handled this. California's system was not built for it. What does Japan's earthquake insurance system look like, and how does it compare to California's? Japan's earthquake insurance is embedded in the national housing finance system. Residential earthquake insurance in Japan is sold as a rider on fire insurance policies, with the government acting as reinsurer above a certain threshold through the Japan Earthquake Reinsurance Pool established after the 1966 Matsushiro earthquake swarm. The system was significantly upgraded after the 1995 Kobe earthquake, which at the time exposed the inadequacy of the coverage pool. Premium rates are regulated by the government and are set at levels that are affordable rather than actuarially optimal, with the implicit understanding that the government backstops the pool if losses exceed its capacity. The result is high penetration rates. A significant majority of Japanese homeowners in earthquake-prone areas carry earthquake insurance. In California, the earthquake insurance market has been effectively broken since 1994. The Northridge earthquake of January 17, 1994, magnitude 6.7, 57 deaths, roughly $20 billion in insured losses at the time, was so financially devastating to the insurance industry that private insurers began withdrawing earthquake coverage from California residential policies within months of the event. By 1996, the California legislature had created the California Earthquake Authority, a publicly managed but privately funded insurance pool, specifically to ensure that earthquake insurance remained available to California homeowners after the private market retreated. The CEA has grown substantially since 1996 and offers earthquake policies in California. But it is not mandatory. Nobody has to buy it, and most people do not. Approximately 10% of California homeowners currently carry earthquake insurance. That number has barely moved in 30 years despite repeated warnings, repeated modeling of catastrophic earthquake scenarios, and repeated public education campaigns. The reasons are well documented. Premiums are expensive relative to what most homeowners feel they can afford. Deductibles are typically 10 to 25% of the insured dwelling value, meaning a homeowner with a $800,000 home faces a $80,000 to $200,000 out of pocket before any insurance payment begins, and a cognitive tendency to underweight low probability, high consequence risks that do not happen in a person's lifetime, a tendency that gets stronger the longer the interval since the last major event. The interval has been long enough. The Bay Area's last damaging earthquake was Loma Prieta in 1989. Southern California's last was Northridge in 1994. Those events happened before most of the current population of California's major cities moved there. The earthquake risk is no lower than it was in 1994. The insurance penetration is approximately the same as it was in 1994, and the property values have multiplied several times over, meaning the potential uninsured loss in a major California earthquake today is far larger in absolute terms than the uninsured loss in any prior event. What is coming for California, then, is not necessarily a specific earthquake on a specific fault. It is the accumulated consequence of decades of deferred financial preparation for a hazard that California's own seismologists are clear is not a matter of if. The Hayward fault will rupture again. The southern San Andreas will rupture again. The Cascadia subduction zone will rupture again. When any of those events occurs, the insured loss will be a fraction of the total loss, because the overwhelming majority of the damaged and destroyed property will be owned by people who made the decision, every year, for decades, not to purchase earthquake insurance. Japan's M7.1 cost the insured system roughly $1.1 billion. The comparison case in California, a Hayward M7.0 in the Hayward scenario, projects total losses in the range of $82 billion, with the insured fraction representing a small portion of that. The uninsured losses land on homeowners, on renters without contents insurance, on small businesses, and on the government programs that must provide disaster assistance when people have nothing else to fall back on. The Sonoma M4.3 on Monday and the Mammoth Lakes M3.4 on Wednesday are not harbingers of specific imminent catastrophes. They are the normal operating state of one of the most seismically active regions in the world, reminding anyone paying attention that the geological forces that have been loading California's faults for centuries have not taken any days off. The Japan earthquake provided the frame. Bloomberg Intelligence provided the sentence. California's insurance system was not built for it. What's coming is the day when that sentence describes not an ongoing vulnerability, but a completed event. The specific action this situation calls for from anyone who owns property in California is a conversation with your insurance agent this week about earthquake coverage options. CEA policies and comparable private policies are available. The specific deductible structure is negotiable within certain ranges. The premium is a known, manageable cost. The uninsured loss after a Hayward earthquake is not. The earthquake readiness steps I covered in the California faulted. Junction video, securing heavy furniture, having emergency supplies, knowing shake alert, all remain valid. None of them address the financial recovery problem that 90% of California homeowners have left unmanaged. This is the week to address it. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.